The first scream didn't sound human. It tore through the canyon air like something wounded and wild, sharp enough to make the cowboy's horse jerk its head and snort. It was the kind of sound a man didn't ignore, not out here where danger hid behind every rock and shadow. Colt Mercer tugged his reins, scanning the riverbed below. Sunlight flashed across the water, and something moved, small, trembling and alone. Another cry shattered the silence. Colt kicked his boots lightly, guiding the horse down the slope, dust rising behind him. When he reached the riverbank, he saw her, a young Apache girl no older than 12, kneeling in the mud with her face buried in her hands, her thin shoulders shaking like she was trying to hold the whole world together and failing, but it was her bloodied foot that made him stop cold. She looked up when she heard his horse's hooves, and her terrified dark eyes went straight through him. She stumbled back, ready to run or fight or die, whatever came first. Colt raised his hands, palms out. "I ain't here to hurt you," he said softly. She didn't believe him. No one ever did at first, not out here. He slid off his horse slowly. She flinched, clutching a torn piece of cloth to her chest like it could shield her. Her braids were messy, dust and river water dripping off her buckskin dress, and her breath came in ragged gasps. "What happened?" he asked. She opened her mouth, but all that came out was a broken whisper. He moved closer and she didn't run. That alone told him she was desperate. Colt crouched to check her injured foot. A long thorn was buried deep in the sole and dried blood streaked her ankle. She'd been walking barefoot, running more like for a long time. Her dress was ripped in 2 places, and someone had grabbed her hard enough to bruise her arms. Someone had chased her, and they might still be close. "Let me help," he murmured. She stared at him, fear slowly giving way to something worse. Pleading. Screamed and ducked. Colt yanked the horse behind a fallen tree as a second shot, sparked off a rock near his boot. They had found them. Hoofbeats thundered toward the river. Colt didn't need a rifle scope to know these weren't lawmen. "Toya," he breathed, "hang on tight." She grabbed the saddle horn, shaking. 3 riders burst out from behind the rocks across the river. Rough men with knives strapped to their belts and rifles slung on their shoulders. One looked straight at them and grinned. A rotten-toothed, dead-eyed grin that promised nothing good. "There she is," the man shouted. And she got herself a hero. Colt didn't wait. He kicked his horse hard, and they shot forward like lightning. Bullets tore past them, ripping through mesquite bushes and sending birds scattering into the sky. Toya clung to him, praying under her breath. Colt dashed through cactus patches. Weaving through rocky terrain his horse barely managed to clear. A bullet grazed his sleeve and he felt the burn, but he didn't slow. Miles of desert stretched ahead, and behind them the riders kept coming, fast and merciless. Colt knew he couldn't outrun bullets forever. He needed to disappear. He pulled hard on the reins, turning sharply toward a narrow ravine. The horse leapt over a dry wash, hooves kicking up stones as they dove into the shadows. The gunfire stopped. For a moment all Colt heard was Toya's trembling breathing and his own heart pounding, like a drum against his ribs. But he knew better than to trust silence. "They gonna kill us?" Toya whispered. "No," Colt said firmly. "Not today." But she heard the lie he didn't want to speak. He slid off and helped her down. She winced again as her injured foot touched the ground. Colt quickly lifted her onto his back, carrying her deeper into the ravine where the sun barely reached. Behind them, faint voices echoed.
"They went this way?"
Colt felt Toya's breath against his neck. "You saved me," she whispered. He shook his head. "Ain't saved anyone yet." He ducked into a narrow opening between 2 boulders, barely wide enough for a man. The horse wouldn't fit, it would have to be left behind. He whispered something soft into its ear and slapped its flank. The horse bolted away, hooves echoing until the sound faded. Toya watched, eyes wide with fear. Will they hurt him? Not if he runs fast. Inside the small crevice, Colt set her down gently. She bit her lip as pain shot through her foot again. He examined it quickly, then gripped the thorn. "This'll hurt," he warned. She nodded. A single tear slid down her cheek. He pulled the thorn in one quick motion. Toya gasped, covering her mouth as blood trickled out. Colt tore a piece from his shirt and wrapped her foot tightly. Outside, the riders grew closer. "Search the ravine." "They didn't get far." Toya looked at him with desperate trust. "Are we going to die?" Colt loaded his revolver, each click echoing like a countdown. "Not if I shoot." "Straighter than they do." The first man appeared at the mouth of the ravine, scanning the rocks. Colt steadied his breath. When the man stepped closer, Colt fired once. The rider fell hard, rifle slipping from his hand. Toya covered her ears as the gunshot rolled through the canyon. Two more men shouted, their boots pounding the rocks. Colt fired at the second, hitting him in the shoulder, sending him spinning against a rock formation. The third man ducked and returned fire, bullets crackling past the stones. Colt shielded Toya with his body. "Stay low," he ordered. The gunfight turned brutal and fast. Colt rolled to another boulder, firing again. The last gunman cursed loudly, reloading behind a fallen log. Colt could hear him breathing hard, scraping metal. Then the man shouted, "You think she'll save you? That Apache brat ain't worth dying for." Toya flinched hard, eyes filling with tears. Colt felt something cold rise inside him. Anger sharpened into something deadly. He stepped out, aimed, and fired. The final gunman collapsed, rifle slipping from his hands. Silence fell over the ravine. Toya trembled, staring at the bodies scattered among rocks and dust. Colt holstered his gun and kneeled beside her. "You're safe now," he murmured. "No," she said quietly. "My little sister. They still have her." Colt felt a chill. "There was another?" he asked. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Lena, she is only 6. They tied her. They took her. They wanted to sell her." Colt's stomach twisted. He'd seen this before, too many times. Innocent children taken, families destroyed, evil men walking free because no one dared chase them. But he dared. "You know where they took her?" he asked. Toya nodded weakly. "To the old mine?" 2 hours from here. They said more men waiting there. Colt stared at the horizon beyond the rocks. The sun was sinking. Night would bring cold, darkness, and danger, but also cover. He wiped the dust from her cheek. "I'll get her back." She grabbed his coat with trembling fingers. "Please, do not lie to me." "Toya," he said, his voice rough. "I don't lie about saving children." He carried her out of the ravine once the danger had passed. His horse, faithful as ever, returned from hiding. Colt lifted her onto the saddle. "You ride," he said. "I'll lead." As they traveled toward the old mine, Toya kept glancing at him, like she wanted to speak but didn't dare. Finally she whispered, "Why you help me?" Colt hesitated before answering. "Because once, a long time ago, someone didn't help someone I loved. I ain't letting that happen again." When they reached the abandoned mine entrance, the moon had risen high. Torches flickered inside. Voices echoed. Rough laughter, drunken shouts, and a child crying. Toya's tiny gasp stabbed Colt straight through the heart. "That's Lena," she whispered. Colt put a finger to his lips. "Stay here. No matter what happened, stay hidden." She nodded, trembling. Colt drew his revolver and knife, then slipped inside. Shadows danced on crumbling walls. He followed the echo of the crying deeper until he reached a wide chamber lit by lanterns. There were 3 more men, and little Lena, tied to a post, cheeks wet with tears, dress ripped at the sleeve. One man raised a bottle. "She'll fetch a good price tomorrow." Colt shot him before he finished the sentence. The lantern swung wildly as the other 2 men dove for weapons. Colt charged, tackling the closest one. They hit the ground hard, rolling through dust. The second man fired wildly, missing by inches. Colt slammed his knife into the first man's shoulder, sending him sprawling. He rolled, grabbed the fallen rifle, and fired at the second man, dropping him instantly. Breathing hard, Colt shoved the remaining man against the wall. "Where are the others? Any more coming?" No, the man stuttered. "Just us." Colt hit him with the rifle butt and he collapsed. He rushed to Lena, cutting the ropes. The little girl fell into his arms, sobbing. "Toya?" she cried. "She's safe," Colt whispered. "Your sister's waiting outside." He carried her back toward the entrance. When Toya saw them, she ran forward, ignoring the pain in her foot, and threw her arms around her little sister. Both girls collapsed into each other, crying softly. Colt stood over them, heart pounding with a strange mix of relief and something deeper, something that felt almost like purpose. Toya looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "You changed our lives," she whispered. "You saved us." Colt felt his chest tighten. He had spent years wandering like a ghost, certain the world had nothing left worth fighting for. But tonight something shifted. Quiet, powerful, unexpected. "Girls," he said softly, "we're going home." They rode together into the breaking dawn, 2 sisters clinging to the man who'd risked everything for strangers, and a cowboy who finally found something greater than the past he'd been running from. And he knew deep in his bones, that what began by the river had changed his life forever.